In the heat of battle, when swords clashed and cannons roared, there was another sound that echoed across the battlefield: thunderous drums, haunting horns, and voices chanting in unison. But this wasn't chaos. It was calculated warfare. This was the Mehter Band, the world's first military orchestra, and a secret weapon of one of the most powerful empires to ever exist, the Ottomans. Imagine an army marching not just with weapons, but with an entire orchestra, playing music so loud and terrifying that it caused enemies to flee before a single sword was drawn. But how did it work? Why was music so lethal in the hands of the Mehter? And how did this ancient tactic disappear, only to be rediscovered centuries later? Stick around, because the shocking truth behind the Mehter Band is more than music, that it's psychological warfare. And you're about to hear it. Most people think of music as art, something for dancing, relaxing, maybe even protesting. But centuries ago, the Ottoman Empire understood something much deeper. They used music as a weapon, not metaphorically. Literally, the Mehter Band, also known as Mehter, wasn't composed of entertainers. They were warriors of sound, trained to strike fear into the hearts of their enemies and ignite courage in their own soldiers. These musicians marched with armies into war. They didn't play behind the lines, they led the assault. And the instruments they used were loud, powerful, and intentionally overwhelming. In this video, you're going to learn the lost history of the Mehter Band, how they rose alongside the empire itself, what made them so terrifying, and why they eventually vanished, only to be reborn in modern times. That you'll hear shocking facts, unbelievable tactics, and a twist you didn't see coming. Most importantly, we'll explore why this story still matters. Because in a world full of noise, true power often lies in what people choose to hear. Now let's go deeper into the forgotten sound of war and the strategy behind the music that conquered nations. The story of the Mehter Band begins not in a music hall, but on the bloody battlefield of the 14th century. During the rising power of the Ottoman Empire, it was a time of swords, arrows, and the terrifying unknown of battle. Soldiers were often illiterate, communication was chaotic, and morale could turn the tide of a war. The Ottomans discovered something others hadn't yet understood. Sound was strategy. The Mehter Band functioned as the heartbeat of the Ottoman army. With shrill zurnas, a piercing woodwind instrument, deep beating drums, and a rhythm so overwhelming it pierced through fear, it created what modern psychologists might call a sensory overload. But it wasn't about art. It was science before science. When the Mehter plays, the enemy feels the war before they even see it. Every Ottoman battalion had its own musical unit. They would play during marches, battles, and even as the sun rose over enemy strongholds. A strategic message: we are coming, and we are not afraid. But how did it actually work in practice? Let's dive into their most chilling tactic. Picture this: you're a soldier from a European kingdom, camped near a valley. Dawn hasn't broken yet. Fog hugs the earth. Suddenly, a giant, thunderous beat shakes your chest. Then a scream of war horns. Chanting, marching, not close, but getting closer. You can't see the enemy, but you hear them coming louder and louder. Your hands tremble, horses panic, and then it hits you. You're not fighting men anymore, you're fighting a force that announces its arrival like a force of nature. Many European armies reported being psychologically devastated before physical combat started. Horses would go wild. Soldiers abandoned their posts or made strategic retreats before swords crossed. And here's the most chilling part: the Mehter Band marched at the front of the army, not hiding behind warriors, leading them. Their uniforms were vibrant and blinding. The message was clear: we fear nothing. We lead with sound. Many enemy reports logged in medieval letters and diaries referred to the Mehter as the voice of death approaching. And yet, that was only the beginning of their strategic genius. While the band terrified Ottoman enemies, it was equally important inward. Each beat of the drum acted as a command. Each melody, a moral boost. Ottoman soldiers didn't just follow orders. They followed the rhythm. The music synchronized thousands of soldiers, raised morale, and created a sense of brotherhood, like a heartbeat in sync. When a retreat tempted fear, the Mehter didn't stop playing. They played louder. But here's the part almost no one knows: sultans and generals would customize the Mehter Band for psychological tactics. For longer battles, slower rhythms to pace the troops for sudden attacks, chaotic blasts to confuse the enemy. The Mehter wasn't just a band, it was psychological engineering. Centuries before psychology was a science, one surviving score from a 15th century battle piece is estimated to be performed at over 130 decibels, louder than a chainsaw or a jet engine at takeoff. As the Ottoman Empire expanded, Mehter music became almost mythological, but not everyone was a fan. Inside the empire, scholars and conservative leaders opposed the obsessive focus on music in warfare. You cannot mix tradition with aggression, one conservative advisor reportedly warned during the 1700s. Others feared that it turned glory into theater. Was the Mehter becoming too much pride? Not enough strategy? But then something deeper changed. The Ottomans were no longer dominating. European forces were modernizing. Guns, artillery, new tactics. And suddenly, music didn't seem like enough. In the 1820s, Sultan Mahmud II made a decision that shocked the empire. He abolished the Janissaries, the elite infantry tied closely to the Mehter tradition. And with them, he disbanded the Mehter Band. Just like that, after nearly 400 years of war music, the sound of the empire fell silent. Why? Mahmud II wanted a westernized army, like France, Prussia, Britain. We must adopt their ways, he wrote. Music is no longer our tool. The boldest psychological weapon in Islamic military history was erased. For nearly 100 years, the world forgot the power of the Mehter, but what came next changed everything again. In 1911, a historian named Rafat Bey led a movement to rebuild the old Mehter Band, piece by piece, from manuscripts and oral tradition. Why? Because Turks, faced with nationalism and cultural erosion, needed more than pride. They needed legacy. And so, from silence rose the sound of the old empire, not for war, but for identity. Today, the Mehter Band plays not on battlefields, but in squares, festivals, and national events. But here's the crazy part. The same rhythms they use today were once designed to terrify men into surrendering their lives. Modern military scientists have studied Mehter music and found the loud, repetitive, rhythmic structures synchronize heart rates, increase testosterone, and create battle-ready psychological states. Even today, but there's one more twist: the West copied them. Think about modern marching bands, drums, flags, pride, symbolism. Or Wagner's music in Nazi rallies, the Soviet Red Army's use of choir and drum. Or even American football games. The Mehter Band wasn't just a band. It became a blueprint. It changed how nations used music, not just for entertainment, but for influence, identity, and control. A forgotten tactic from an empire long gone, reinvented in the modern world. You just didn't realize until now. Why does this story matter today? Because we still live in a world of influence. Only now, the instruments are different. It's not always drums and horns. It's media, messaging, images, algorithms. The Mehter Band reminds us that sound, rhythm, and psychology have always been tools of power, capable of building unity or inducing fear. And maybe, just maybe, what we listen to matters more than we ever thought. Because even today, whether on screen, in stadiums, or in politics, someone is always playing the drums of influence. The question is, can you hear it? What would you have done if you were leading an army and heard the Mehter Band in the distance? Would you fight or flee? Drop your answer in the comments. We're reading them all. If this story surprised you, changed your perspective, or gave you chills, you know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe, and don't forget to tap the bell, because our next video dives into another forgotten weapon empires used to conquer the world. And trust us, you've never heard this one either. Thanks for watching.